Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Just easing back into streaming after a difficult summer. I think this is the first time I've streamed with this new computer, so if things don't work out well, then they don't work out well, but we'll see if it works. But keep me in track about whether or not all the levels are right and everything, because for some reason in this new computer, that everything's diminished. All the levels are quieter for some reason. But we will. I will just fill out this tune while we wait for folk to filter in, and then get chatting about some stuff. I've got some stuff to talk about, largely about the state of UK politics. Voice is only coming out the left. This might be an issue. Is the music coming out through both? Let's see. Music only on the right and voice only on the left. Let's have a look at how we can try and sort this. I've just clicked mono, and let me know if that fixes that. Good stuff. Okay, first audio issue sorted. Let's fill out this track and wait for folk to filter in. Nice to see you, Michael. Always a pleasure to see you in chat. Everyone go follow Michael Burns if you don't already. Great channel, great lad. That bass line sucked. time you put down a plectrum, it disappears. I accidentally deleted the bass line. Fuck's sake. Look, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm losing stuff. So we're just gonna start here. I'm just gonna get something going, and then we'll fucking. We're gonna start again, and then we're really gonna get the. I've got a little can of. I was gonna do wine, but my flatmate. But I just wasn't feeling wine tonight. My flatmate went to Japan recently and found this thing called what was it called, like Extreme Zero or something, or Zero Frozen or something like that. That are like, this one's like a grapefruit and vodka soda water, and they're very easy to drink because the alcohol industry is constantly looking for ways to make alcohol easier to drink and introduce children to it because the alcohol industry is evil. Hi, Asana, nice to see you. How's it going? I am gonna restart some tune and then fucking actually start the stream. Okay, well this is how about every contemporary Scottish folk student starts. We'll build something from this. Literally every single Scottish folk tune sounds like that. Contemporary Scottish folk tune. As Brian Nicholson, the Shetland guitar player, would say, it's BBC Alba music. There we go. That's quite good. Alright, with that, let's actually get started. Alright, so once again, for anyone who didn't see, first time streaming on this, on a new laptop. So if anything goes wrong, if the levels are a bit odd, if anything seems a bit strange, just let me know in chat. I'll squint my eyes, but there must be a way to make the YouTube chat box bigger. My laptop's so far from my screen is so far from where I'm sitting. I have to squint to see it. But if you can't hear me or the balances are wrong, give me a shout and I'll figure it out. So today, instead of wine, for anyone who's new, normally we do wine. I say normally, but we're back at it. Today we're not doing wine. We've got this this Extreme Zero or whatever it's called, Super Zero, something or else, some Japanese, basically, like vodka and juice drink that is refreshing, and they're not paying me to say that. But we're gonna do that. We're just gonna crack that, and then we'll get started. Mr. Andir, that's very nice to hear. It also makes me feel like I'm old because, like, I guess I've been doing this for about 6 years now, which is crazy. The notion that there was people who were in grad school who now no, this is not wine. This is a vodka seltzer thing. Yeah, it's been about 6 years on this channel, so I guess there are people who were who did watch me in grad school, which is fun, I guess. Does the classic Control Plus help? Let's take a look. Oh my god, I guess it'd be Command and Plus. Oh my god, it does. I am tech savvy. Thank you. That does help. Anyway, so for some context, I'm not going to tell you exactly what has been going wrong in the summer because it's personal, but basically the past few months have been in a very difficult time for personal reasons, and like in a real oh yeah, this year's shaping up to be one of the worst I've had. And obviously took a big break because of that, and it's only recently I've felt like I've been able to get back into streaming. I've managed to make some videos, some shorter videos, but streaming is a weird thing because it's like 2 to 3 hours of performance, and that's hard to pull off when you're not in a great headspace. So we're sort of easing our way in today, dipping our toes back into the streaming water, and hoping that things go well. So we probably won't do as long as we normally would. We'll probably maybe do a couple of hours, stop at about 10. Yeah, just try and keep it relatively chilled out and see how it goes. Part of doing this is it is always fun to do the streams, even if it takes a lot out of you. Another reason being that, unfortunately, the channel seems to be kind of dying a wee bit of a death, and I think part of that is that I stopped doing streaming, which counts towards, I guess, uploads and activity in the channel, so YouTube stops recommending it, so I kind of probably should get back to it. And yeah, so I guess what we'll do today, now that hiya Sam, how you? Hope you're doing good. Yeah, basically plan today, make some music, drink some of this surprisingly refreshing Japanese vodka seltzer drink, talk about how the British left is fucked in many ways, and just make some music. Hoping the vibes stay relatively chill. And yeah, as ever, any requests for conversation or anything that you'd like to talk about in chat, go for it. Yeah, I should probably talk to you at some point, Michael, about like whether you know if there's been like a change in the YouTube algorithm. I suspect, and I don't know if this is not based on anything. Yes, it is Yom Kippur. Thanks for popping in. And I appreciate you popping in for such a auspicious day. Yeah, I think a suspicion I've had is that YouTube has changed its algorithm to more to be more comparable to the TikTok algorithm. And obviously the TikTok algorithm, the way that works is that it biases really heavily recency rather than history in what you've been watching. So and I'm not saying my TikTok is like this, but say your TikTok is almost exclusively videos of cows that you like to watch and sometimes cry about, because cows are incredible creatures. They're sensitive, they're curious, they like jazz, and sometimes you like to watch hours of cow videos and they kind of make you cry a little bit. Say that's hypothetically what your TikTok algorithm's like, and then you watch maybe one video of a bald, shit, British, wannabe political authority, and suddenly all of your feed is bald, shit, wannabe political authorities, because the TikTok algorithm really biases recency. So you're getting all this stuff, and that's how it tries to keep you on the app. And I wonder if the YouTube algorithm has been altered to do that more, which obviously benefits people who upload lots, if that was the case. And it would also explain why so many people are not getting notified or getting any indication when I post, because a big thing I'm hearing from a lot of people is they're not getting any indication or any notification or any feed like presence of any of my new uploads. And I wonder if that's because they're just the algorithm's been changed so that people's not historic viewing patterns, but like most current viewing patterns that are being biased. And I wonder, I don't know, but I wonder if that's part of what's happened. That's just a potential, Yeah, I mean that's just a hypothetical of anyone's TikTok algorithm. Anyone's TikTok algorithm could be cows. I know cows have best friends. Of course I know that cows have best friends. Not completely irrelevant to my hypothetical, but I do know cows have best friends. And they sit next to their best friends when they eat grass, and they get sad when their best friends leave or die. Yep, I knew that, and it doesn't affect me, because it doesn't affect me. But anyway, I guess we can move on from cows, I guess. One of the saddest things that you ever have to say is, well, I guess I'll move on from cows. And we can talk about the condition of British left-wingers at the moment. Because that's what everyone wants to hear about. That's interesting because we've had these. There's some similar, I guess. I think there's been some similar. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Some similar dynamics on between the British and American, the British left and the American liberal centre, because there was recently the Ta-Nehisi Coates Ezra Klein interview conversation. See you later, Sinan. Hope you have a good one. For anyone who doesn't know me and Sinan, on SK the Crusaders channel, every other Thursday we do D&D. You should come along and watch our escapades. The vibes are always fucked. We are always, things always get weird very quickly. Yeah, so there was that I don't know if anyone saw. I think Michael, if he's still in chat, did that stream about Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ezra Klein's conversation. And the conversation was essentially about how after Charlie Kirk's death, Ezra Klein wrote an article talking about how Charlie Kirk did politics in the right way. And Michael's still here, brilliant. And part of that, and you know, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote an article in response to that, being like, "What the fuck?" essentially. And they had this conversation, and part of the conversation was how Ezra Klein wanted politically to form coalitions to the right of the Democratic Party, and criticised anyone who politically spoke out against the Democratic establishment for things like Gaza, or criticised them on the grounds of them being not left-wing enough. And his whole argument is, well, we need to be reaching out to the right wing, we need to be reaching out to the Republicans to convince them to vote. And the example he gave was running pro-life Democrats in, like, Republican states, whatever. That's, to be clear, very stupid. We're gonna get to Basto and Dan Evans, yeah, and Gary Stevenson, fucking Gary. And the argument essentially is that it's always the right wing that we need to win back, and we need to compromise with these people to get them on board. Unclear how much a compromise is it when you just give up all of your political programme and do what the right wing wants. And this is what the Labour Party have been doing in the UK as well for a number of years. Like I talked about in that last video addendum, but also more generally in the video on care chains, that there has been an intensification of anti-immigrant rhetoric, and part of that is because the Labour Party thinks that it can win on the reform parties, which is the right-wing party who are built around anti-immigration, built around racism. The Labour Party thinks that it can win on that terrain by offering up morsels of more and more anti-migrant politics. Before she left office, Yvette Cooper promised to get rid of the care visas, the Labour Party's migrant white paper, which is the process of a proposed bill as it goes through Parliament. Hugely anti-migrant. And of course the reaction from Reform is, this is not anti-migrant enough. This is not racist enough, and that's why Nigel Farage intensified it and said that we don't want anyone who came here in the last 5 years to have any chance of settled status or citizenship. We want to get rid of them all. Re-immigration is the word that a lot of these far-right people are using these days, which just means deporting people. And in response to that, the new Home Secretary said that she wanted to toughen up the restrictions on getting citizenship and doing a bunch of stuff that Reform wanted to do. Again, trying to assuage the right wing, win on that terrain. Now, where this is coming into the left. Recently, a guy called Gary Stevenson runs a channel called Gary's Economics. See, I've always thought he was a knob, basically. Which was always the extent of my analysis. People, but Gary Stevenson, he's cutting through to the disaffected people in society, like the people who won't listen to the left. Gary is cutting through to them with his no-nonsense working class talk. And I always thought, this guy's a knob. This guy just seems like a knob to me. He was a former trader who extensively talks about how he was the best trader at Citibank because he was so smart, which is obviously not true. It's all, like many people pointed out, this is clearly bollocks. Yeah, in his book, he's got a story where he talks about how he was the best trader in Citibank and best in all this and made the most money. And basically the Financial Times tracked down a bunch of his colleagues, and they were like, look, first of all, this is not how the bank works. You would not be able to clear these massive amounts of profits from these desks that he is claiming to have made out all that money from. Secondly, he always just seemed okay, like a fairly standard. He seemed like a smart guy, but not like an incredible fucking wizard trader. And a lot of the stuff that's in his books is like weirdly kind of like he talks about how someone who had a crippling cocaine addiction came out and was like, yeah, I'm the guy that Gary, like, I'm clearly the guy that Gary's talking about here, and this was the darkest period of my life. It was a horrible time of addiction, and not to like humanize bankers, because obviously we shouldn't, but it's a bit weird, a bit of a weird thing to do. Yeah, the book very much leans on that. There's like the story about him doing really well in an LSE maths competition is apparently true, and lots of people have vouched for that, but I think from what it seems like, that's the one true, undeniably true bit of the book, and the rest of it is very exaggerated for his own self-aggrandizement, and seems to be written, a lot of people are saying, written for the purposes to do a like movie about his life. And I just thought he seemed like a knob. But part of this book and part of his rebrand is about setting himself up as a figure, or like this YouTube channel as a figure who knows how to do politics and is a single issue, kind of populist politics figure with one thing that he cares about, which is a wealth tax. And like, I think this is important. He's not on the left. He's said this many times. He cares about a wealth tax, about this specific thing and this thing only. He doesn't believe in, never mind communist politics. He's not even really a social democrat in that sense. He doesn't doesn't seem to care about changing the structure of the state, anything, improving union politics, improving social services. He cares about a wealth tax in a very specific sense. And in that way, it's like, I was mostly like, fine, you know, if this is a guy who's doing his, if this is a guy who's doing wealth tax stuff, that's fine. Whatever. You can do that. He's now started branching into talking about more political issues. And these include talking about reform voters, people who attended a recent Unite the Kingdom rally, which was the biggest far-right rally numbers-wise in UK history, organised by explicitly neo-Nazis, and just completely like a far-right racist rally, explicitly. And yeah, his response to that was, we need to stop calling these people racist. Because if you call these people racist, then you're not going to be able to convince them of what we need, which is a wealth tax. And instead of calling them racist, what we should do is just change the conversation and say that all their problems are because we don't have a wealth tax. And he criticises people who refer to reform voters as racist. Now, what this has sparked off is a whole bunch of people on the British left, including academics, including people like Anand Bastani, Dan Evans, being saying, yeah, this is obviously correct. It's obviously correct. If you don't want to call people racist because that'll turn them off from joining a coalition with you. Instead, we've got to do something, and it's unclear what. Nobody seems to have specified what exactly. We need to do something to basically just stop them being reform and get them on our side. Talk about, I guess, services, or I guess wealth taxes, or something. The conversation always seems to be, we have to coddle these people. We have to lie to them that they are not racist, that they're just confused, that they have no political agency at all, that anyone who votes reform, aside from a small minority who are explicitly racist, but a lot of people who are on these, apparently a lot of people who was on this Unite the Kingdom anti-migrant neo-Nazi organised march, they were just good people who are confused, and they don't realise that their problems aren't migrants, but their problems are the wealth tax. And if you explain to them clearly that the problem is not migrants, then they'll get on board with you, and they'll become part of the coalition. And this to me seems like fucking bullshit, and seems to be an endemic style of politics for people who work in the media. People who seem to think that politics is marketing, that you can triangulate around people's preferences with a clever populist wealth tax strategy. And if you just trick them and market at them well enough, they will forget that they're racist. They will forget that they hate the idea of migrants living next door to them. They'll forget that they hate the idea of a flood of Muslims coming in and changing the demographic makeup of the country, and they will forget that they are coloured by and operating through white supremacy. And I think this is bollocks. I think it's obviously bollocks. And I think that that's not how you convince people, and it's not how you create a movement. Never mind a movement for social democracy. Like, for Gary, you can almost forgive it. Well, not forgive it. You can understand that within the confines of his politics, which is not a mass movement of a revolutionary working class, but to triangulate voting patterns in a way that allows him to more effectively get a wealth tax, you can almost understand that. Because if you just shift the salience of the migration issue and get them voting for Labour one time, then he can do his wealth tax, and then they can go back to being racist, far-right, anti-migrant supporters. You can almost understand the logic of it behind Gary. For the left-wing academics who insist that they're socialist, it makes no sense. It doesn't make a lick of sense. For two reasons. Firstly, if you wanted to distract these people, they will still be racist. They still have the political agency. They are not idiots. They are not completely blank spaces ready to be directed by the more enlightened views of this, I guess, managerial class of political experts, like some of these white left academics. Speaking as a member of the white left academic group, their politics operates, the reform voters, people on these rallies, their politics operate through race. They're not operating through just a thing like, oh, my life is bad, and it's bad because of migrants, because that's what we've been told. There's an extent to which there's media and the entire structuring of our state pushes people towards those views, but it pushes people towards those views and they hold them. So they internalize the idea that race is the structuring factor of their politics. So lots of them would rather not have a fucking migrant next door than have a wealth tax, because they are racist. Not even if you explain to them, look, this will improve your life if we have a wealth tax, the local fucking community centre will get some more funding. And they'll be like, yeah, but I don't like having these fucking migrants near me. That's why they go to burn down migrant hotels. That's why they went to lynch Muslims on the streets. Because race is the motivating factor. And the only way to deal with a politics where race is the motivating factor is not to triangulate around it, but to confront it head on. And it's not something you can do through marketing. It's not something you can be like, here's a mass message to all the reform voters. You're racist, therefore don't be racist. Obviously you can't do that in the same way you can't do, look, I know you're concerned, but the wealth tax is pretty good. You can't do it. This kind of deprogramming operates on small scale levels. Between people within communities, amongst communities, within families, and within friend groups. I've had conversations with people that have had racist views, and the only way to convince them not to have those views is to say, that's racist. You're being racist right now. And the only reason I'm still talking to you about it is because I think you're not a lost cause of a person. You're a person that I think can be convinced not to be racist. And that takes time and effort and is a much harder game than pretending we can triangulate around it. And it's one of the reasons why it really frustrates me when a lot of these people are like, oh, the left don't want to talk to people. They don't want to talk, they just want to scream at reform voters on the street and call them racist. But we the smart people, we know that you've got to convince them. They're not trying to convince people. They're trying to distract people. And that will not work. The actual hard work of convincing people requires you to tell them that they are being racist and to try and stop them from being racist. It requires you engaging on that terrain, not vacating it or triangulating around it. And the other sort of reason why this attempt to refuse the label of racism for these people, for people on the streets doing this far-right work, part of why we need to be on the street calling these people racist is because a far-right mobilization requires a counter-mobilization. And it requires people to be on the streets, making those people who say, get them all out, get the migrants out, needs us to be there and say, fuck you. These streets are not meant for you, they're meant for the people they're meant for the diverse working class that exists across this country, the racially diverse working class. And that cannot, you need to be on the streets calling these people fucking racists when they take to the streets in hundreds of thousands calling to deport all migrants. You need to be there as a show of strength. And those are different moments of politics, but both of them are required. And it's so frustrating seeing media figures like Bastani and Gary Stevenson and academics like Dan Evans talk about, dismiss people. I saw Dan Evans said, this is Yank politics. Everyone is everyone in the UK seems to have taken on this kind of, what's the word he said, American idea of whiteness and applied it uncritically to the UK. And it's like, what he's essentially getting at is he thinks that race isn't a relevant factor in UK politics or organising, which is obviously in itself racist. These are essential things that you've got to deal with. the other sort of side of this, an interesting thing that came up was the new head of the RMT, Eddie Dempsey, penned an article in Tribune magazine. It's never a good sign when people pen articles in the Tribune. It's like when people pen articles in the Jacobin, you're like, oh no, someone's penned something. I never like it when someone pens something. It's usually going to annoy me. But his penned article was all about how the left has vacated class politics and is too concerned with climate and gender, and has evacuated the guiding socialist principles of universalism. And I'm not going to get too into it, because for anyone who doesn't know, Dempsey has a long history of being associated with what was called the Blue Labour, which is like social conservatism on the right wing of, I guess, the labour movement. He's expressed defences of transphobic people. He defended a domestic abuser and called his accuser a crazy woman. He had various he had a complaint against him from the Black Caucus of the RMT, and he was known for being, a fanny, essentially. And he nuked his Twitter account a few years ago, and for a while people were like, oh, maybe he's learned to be better. But it seems that the most likely scenario is that he was nuking his Twitter account so that he couldn't be criticised once he took the senior union position. But what I found funny about this article that he wrote was that it could have been beat for beat the exact things that I was criticising in my video on anti-woke politics and the article that I wrote for the New International magazine. The concern for a universalist social program which consolidates everything amongst this ideal of the white-waged labourer as the universal subject, while dismissing or minimising, gender and race as a concern. And he had a very suspect turn of phrase when he said something along the lines of, working classes in this country are increasingly concerned about demographic changes in their communities, and then immediately counterposed that with crime. And I was like, that's an interesting combination of words that you've used there. What an interesting couple of words. So, all in all, a banner time for the, white, institutionalized left wing of the fucking left movement in the UK. One which is fractured and filled with people desperate to forge alliances with people to the right, not by changing those people's views, but by acquiescing to them. Which is it's grand, isn't it? And that's basically what's been on my mind. And with that, I guess, we'll change up the music before I scare too many people off with my long ranting. Maybe I can find the plectrum. God only knows where it's gone. The thing is, it's red as well. Oh, there it is. Found it. Yeah, movement does feel like a strong word. Never mind the absolute shitstorm, which is the attempt to start a new party. I think that my mono synth might have a loose cable, which is not great. Or maybe it's just the cables. The synth and the chorus pedal don't seem to be working. I'll have to have a wee look and figure that out. Fuck it, we're doing that. For some reason, that did not record. Okay, fuck him, we're getting weird with it. sound. What a good time. Michael, pedal round down. I've done it before, but sorry, that was too loud there. What I have, I won't move my camera because I can't be arsed, but I've got a JTC loop pedal, which is both the loop and the drum loops that you get in there. I've got a hardwire delay and reverb pedal. I've got a mono synth pedal, which is the one that doesn't seem to be working. It might be an issue with the connections. I don't know. I've got a DS1 distortion stomp box, an Ultra Octaver for the bass, and a spinning chorus pedal. And then, not connected up, I've got a Governor stomp box as well. And those are the pedals that I've got. The guitar is a relatively new guitar as well that I got second hand from Guitar. Turns out after I got this guitar, my brother has the exact same one, just in green, which is fun. Yeah, I think, I said recently, I think maybe under one of your videos, that there's only 2 types of sponsorship that I would take, and that was books and sex toys. But maybe guitars as well. I'd take a guitar sponsorship. So, Gretsch, hey, if you want to sponsor me, Gretsch, do you want your brand associated with communism? Because I'm right here, ready for it, ready for the conversation. Call me, email me. I get so many bad brand deals. Just send me a free guitar, and I will play it on stream for 40 people. I hear you need all the help you can get, Gretsch. Jared Henderson, big guitar guy too. I don't even know if I'm a big guitar guy. I just like playing guitars. I've never been very good at knowing like the different. I've always wanted a Gretsch because I like the style of them, but I've never like known loads about guitars. Even when I've played them lots. Like, I know some people who just like know everything about them and know how to fix them and care for them, and I'm just like, yeah, I can play it and I enjoy playing it. Sometimes like people will send me tweets and be like, yeah, just got this secondhand BTCX and the limited edition bronze run of the Luminary Grand guitars, and I'm like, it looks nice, man. looks like hey, good job. And I'm sure those words are important to some people. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about today, specifically? What is there anything anyone in chat wants to talk? Oh, I mean, I do have a video I filmed a new video today. One of the things that I'm attempting to do is pump out content more effectively. And by pump out, I mean make slightly shorter videos that are still of high quality. I don't want to sacrifice the quality of the work, but I'm trying to turn around the work a bit quicker. So I filmed the video today, hopefully it'll be out next week. Once I've got corrections for paper finished up. Hopefully that'll be the last corrections in this paper. Basically, so okay, the video first. Video is going to be on the cunning recognition of Palestine. Patrons can read the script already. It's already up there. Yeah, so if you want to read the script early, you can read the script. It's about how a slightly deeper view on why the UK, France, Canada and Australia recognised and decided to recognise Palestinian statehood at this moment, which a lot of the conversation has been about, oh, it's a useless thing that it did. It's just like to win a specific constituency of votes that they have lost through being, genocidal maniacs, and arming Israel while still and sharing intelligence. And so lots of people are like, yeah, this recognition is just a way to sort of placate some people's concerns about the Labour Party and try and win back some votes, which I think is true to an extent. But the argument that I go in for is that deeper than this, the recognition of Palestinian statehood fits within a longer history of using recognition to bring in and sort of pacify particular frames of colonized subjecthood within the framework of either the settler state or the wider international system. And I draw on some work of Glenn Coulthard and his work Red Skin, White Masks, where he talks about how the recognition politics of neoliberal Canada was essentially just a way to transform the colonial relation for the neoliberal age, where recognition was always dependent on accepting the authority of the settler state and opened up, in a lot of cases, land to development. And merging that with the concept of cunning recognition, which is a concept that emerges from human rights literature, about how particularly, though not exclusively, Indigenous people are often brought into being rights holders. They're often granted land rights, but those land rights are granted again on the condition that you accept the settler state as the legitimate authority, and that you open up land to development. And I sort of use this to examine the Oslo Accords, the emergence of the PA as an organisation, and then this recognition of the Palestinian statehood at the moment. It's not a particularly long or deep analysis, but I do think it adds a fair amount to what has been discussed in terms of the UK's recognition of Palestine at the moment. And I'll talk a bit about this. You know what I'll do? I'm gonna crack open another drink. I'm gonna put you on to my Be Right Back screen. I'm gonna quickly pop to the toilet, and I'm gonna crack open another drink, and then I will talk to you about this fascism research that I've been doing, which I will turn into a video at some point soon. And I will talk about my spiteful revision tactics. So I'll be back in 2 minutes. Enjoy this funky ass music. Burkstorm, I don't appreciate the implication that you're making. I don't look that much older than the. I've not aged that much, and to answer your question, maybe 4 years, maybe 5. Maybe closer to 4 years. That was maybe closer to 5 years. That was in my parents' house. That was during a video that I would have made when I was back in my parents during COVID. So a fair amount of time, but I think I look grand. Stop. I don't appreciate the implication. I'm gonna make a more chilled tune though before we move on to discuss fascism. Age with grace. Yes, of course. I age with grace. for some reason the drums are off sync on this one, so this one's not gonna have any drums. Which means we've got to make up some rhythm. There is a way to, I guess, that could work. Did not think that was going to go in that direction, but there we go. That's quite fun, isn't it? Okay, this time we've not got the wine tasting, but we do have the Extreme Zero or whatever it's called reason a tasting. So the previous one was grapefruit. This one is lemon. Both are nice. You can really taste the lemon. See, unlike my wine tasting, I can taste the lemon in this. Okay, so I was going to talk a bit about the fascism. The old fascism. And discuss my, the way that I approach reviewers. So for the past year or so, myself and a friend of mine, Kian, who's a historian, just finished his PhD and starting a postdoc in Cambridge actually, soon enough, he's an historian of fascism, and he particularly focuses on the black radical interpretations and histories of fascism. And we and him have been working on a paper on the sort of nexus, the connection between neoliberalism and emergent fascisms. We've been writing this for about a year now, and we submitted it. It's been submitted for a while. We've been working on it for a while. It's been ongoing, and over the summer, at a particularly inopportune time for me, we received the so that the first round of reviews came back in the spring, and one review was essentially we had one review that was like, this is the best piece of work I've read in a long time. This piece of work transforms how I've thought about these two issues. It is a unique and incredible contribution to the field. And then the second review was, this is garbage that belongs in the toilet. This is the worst thing I've ever read, and I hate it. Not quite as bad or as good as that, but that was the essential dynamic at play. And we were like, oh, fuck's sake. So we worked together on the first round of the corrections. We submitted the first round of the corrections. The second round of corrections came in at a really bad time for me personally in my life. At a moment where I wasn't able to do a bunch of work. And the reviews, again, it was the same first reviewer, the same poor reviewer, and a different reviewer. The different reviewer essentially said, this is great, this is brilliant, I don't see any factual errors, any problems with this at all. What a brilliant piece of work this is. Here's a couple of bits and pieces. Yeah, see you around, Michael. Nice to see you. And absolutely, I'll shoot you a message. We can try and do something over the next couple of weeks, if you've got time willing. Yeah, second round reviews came in. Again, one review extremely positive, extremely good. Second review came in from the same reviewer, still like, this is still terrible. I still hate this. And now there's a few more issues that I want to pick up on, including factual issues with your argument, which includes things like factual issues of whether or not there was in the transition to neoliberalism, whether there was a real transfer of social reproduction from state-mediated means to the private household, and whether or not there were that anti-immigrant attitudes, the hard border regimes, have been a common feature of neoliberalism. And I couldn't do much work at the point when these reviews came in. What I could do was download literally 40 articles and about 5 books for me to read, because I know that the factual basis in what I've written is correct. What I wanted to do was mine for references to be like, fuck you to this reviewer. You think this has not got a factual base? Here is 40 references. And so for about a month, I basically read through all of this stuff, all these books, all these papers, refined the paper. It took a lot of work to refine it and to make to sort out where to put these references, to clarify, and to make our argument clearer. Which I'll explain the argument in a second about how fascism seems to be operating at this particular moment, and what our argument in these papers are. This paper is. But I just wanted to share with you, like, spite is such an effective motivator for me. I don't know if that's particularly healthy, but I've never done such thorough research of anything in my life. Not during my PhD, nothing, like, except at this moment when I was feeling particularly fragile emotionally and decided out of spite to read everything on a topic. Never been so motivated in my life. So now the revisions that we're working on in this paper, which are nearly done, have got such a comprehensive amount of referencing out of pure spite, and hopefully as the final round of major revisions, and anything else will just be tidying up. The essential argument for this paper is that the way that fascism is emerging in the contemporary moment, the reason for it isn't necessarily a reaction against neoliberalism. Look, it was channeling a lot of energy. that needed channeling. It was a difficult time, and hey, my iPad needed saw a lot of use. But the essential argument of the paper, and what we think is a sort of one of the emergent, like, trends within neoliberalism, and something that we want to transform, I think, into a book when both of us have a bit more time, is within the literature on fascism, there is a long debate between whether or not fascism is a revolutionary movement or not. And by that, what is meant is this a break from the system of liberalism or neoliberalism? Is it a reaction against it, or is it a development of it? Now, these debates have been going on for a long time, as long as fascism studies have existed. And there's an essay in this book, which I won't show the cover of because it might get me banned on YouTube, which is about by a man called Adrian Littleton, which is all about the continuities between Italian fascism and liberalism prior to it. And it was published in 1973. And even then, that was a review of literature that had been ongoing since the 40s, and especially since the 50s and 60s and post-war era. But a lot of contemporary arguments about the emergence of fascism at the moment is that it's because neoliberal globalization has failed. People are reacting against neoliberalism, and so developing fascism. And so the development of fascism is being posited as a break from neoliberalism. And the argument that we put forward is that rather than a break from it, it's a development of the internal tendencies of neoliberalism, particularly the ones that we focused on were the authoritarian state tendencies. So the push to remove any democratic control over the government, over the economy, the suspicion of collectivism that's present in Hayek, present in neoliberal thought as such, and the attempt to break any collective organizational control of the economy, which includes democratic control, which includes things like moving a lot of power out of the legislative bodies and into central banks, moving power up towards international bodies like the IMF, the World Bank. It includes creating like non-governmental organizations and quangos, constitutionalizing things like Brazil has a constitutional amendment that was put into their constitution in I think 2019, maybe, I can't remember off the top of my head, that essentially embeds austerity politics for like 25 years. And constitutional amendments, difficult to change. Let's get an embeddedness of this. Another aspect which is important is privatizing of services, because once they're privatized, it's exported to the economy and it's not under democratic control. And an area where this has particularly authoritarian tendencies is in border control and policing. So you get a lot of the tendencies of neoliberal border control are securitization, externalization, and moving of border control to private companies. And these are also spread through the state structure of neoliberalism as a state. That's one feature of contemporary neoliberalism, which is essentially what we say a state machinery ready-made for fascist domination. Second aspect is neoliberal's gender regime, which is what we essentially argue that part of the fracturing of the post-war Keynesian or post-Fordist hegemony was that a lot of people were questioning the patriarchal dominance of the family wage, and there was a massive influx of movements around like gender liberation, sexual liberation, as well as things like racial politics as well. Part of the construction of neoliberalism was taking those movements and making them and forming a way, constructing a way to make them acceptable to capital. And that was done for women by mobilizing them into the workforce, by sort of taking a feminist insight that patriarchal domination within the household was horrendous, and being like, yeah, well, we will break the family wage system, move the reserve army of labour into the workforce, and that kind of acquiesces and leads to particular feminist demands being solved in a way. And you can see this in reflection of kind of neoliberal feminisms emerging. But concurrently with that was the privatization of state-mediated forms of social reproduction. So things like care labour, childcare, education, healthcare, these things were either marketized or privatized back onto the family. So women were double responsibilized for both waged work and maintained that family responsibility. And what that created was a system where massive care gaps emerged, because it's impossible for people to do both, all of the care, for like women to do all of the care labour, all the household labour needed to reproduce workers for capitalism, including themselves, and do work, waged work. It's like an impossible double bind situation. And the way that was solved by neoliberalism was importing massive amounts of gendered care labour from the global south and the construction of global care chains, the stuff that we spoke about in that care chains video. And this is when we sort of tie together some of the border stuff. What that required was an organisation of that labour through the border. Women coming from the global south were organised through the border to be easily exploitable. They were racialised and gendered in that process. So you had the re-intensification of the patriarchal regime in the home, where women were still, where that relation was being frayed and broken at the end of Fordism with these social movements. It was reaffirmed and reaccumulated during the neoliberal moment, at the same time as migrant politics, racial divisions of labour and racial organising of labour through the border was also reaccumulated. And these two tendencies are ones that we that have conjoined and created the space and the social relations necessary to be intensified by fascism. And that's why we see, in terms of gender, the increasing reaffirmament of women belong in the household through trad wife stuff, through the legislation, the legislating women's bodies, anti-abortion stuff, through the pro-natalism that's being spread by people like Viktor Orban, Giorgia Meloni, Elon Musk, and is connected to the Great Replacement conspiracy theories. So you see this intense gender regulation, and is of course a part of the emergence of really vicious transphobia, because to maintain a gendered division of labour requires a firm naturalisation of gender. And that means clamping down on any group of people who break that firm gender binary. Trans people. It even means breaking down and attacking any LGBTQ people, because sexuality and gender are mixed within one. It's impossible to think of sexuality without gender, and gender without sexuality. They're coterminous constructions. And you even see the way in which gender is assimilated, sexuality is assimilated within the progressive period of neoliberalism to make it more like homonormative or heteronormative structures. Why you had some forms of gay life criminalised, like cottaging, at the same time as other forms of gay life, like marriage, were accepted, because you wanted to create a heteronormativity, a reaffirmament of the family, and all this. But that becomes intensified, and so you get firm just reactions against gay people. It's not essential, it's not like innate and always going to go this way. Like, we're not saying this was always going to happen, but it's an inherent tendency within the social relations of neoliberal society for this gender regulation to become intensified and ready to become fascist. At the same time, the migrant politics and the racial politics creating the space for nationalism to really rear its head. MAGA movements talking about like a making America great again, and you see people asking, when was America great? Well, back in the 60s. It's a racial nationalist argument. Similarly, in the UK, we've seen similar arguments about like the threat to the nation of migrants and the need to go back to a white, a more pure era. You see it in Italy. You see it across, like the Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, wanted to name Europe's migrant policy program, protecting the European way of life, which is just white nationalism on a European scale. Denmark has its ghettos, its legalized ghettos. I don't know if you guys have heard of Denmark's legalized ghettos. If not, we'll talk about that in a second. It's not great. But that's essentially the overall argument, is that through the authoritarian state, which is ready-made for fascist domination, and the intensification of neoliberalism's racial, nationalist and gender regime, and what we want to talk about as well is the disability politics of this, when we want to expand it into a book project, because I think this is also really important through the sort of social Darwinism of neoliberalism. But through these sort of intensifications, you get the emergence of fascism. And what we want to do, and that's essentially the argument. And I think the argument is correct. I think we've hit upon something that is probably quite true. And I'm excited for this paper to be fucking done, and I'm excited for it to be published, and I'm excited about it so I can make a video about it explaining in greater detail as well. Introduced to Henry George. Do I have a take on Georgist political economics? I'm afraid I don't. I don't have any take on that. I haven't read it, unfortunately. Yeah. So, has anyone heard of... I'm just going to talk about it because it does blow my mind a little bit. That people don't talk about it as much. But thanks, Luke. I mean, once it's out, I will be pushing it everywhere, and you know, I don't know what the access will be like, but if anyone ever wants a paper from me or anything, I will obviously just give it to you. I mean, I'll probably put it on Patreon immediately, but also just if anyone wants it, I will give it to them. Nice to see you. Well, I'll see you soon. Hopefully, I'm glad the stream has gone quite well. Yeah. Yeah. So, Denmark. Yes. So back in, I think it was about 2011, Denmark created zones in Copenhagen and in other places, which it designated as, literally as, and I don't mean this in a this is what they were designated in law, ghettos. They designated them legal ghettos. And the conditions to be designated an area that was a legal ghetto was if, among other things, if more than half of the area was a first or second generation immigrant. So it created legalized ghettos for first and second generation immigrants. Part of what happens within the bounds of these legalized ghettos, I think it was being they changed the wording in law, I think a couple years ago, so that it's no longer a ghetto list, it's now a parallel community, but it's the same thing. They haven't changed really anything. Part of it is that if you are a member, if you live in this ghetto area and you commit a crime, you are legally liable to go to have larger prison sentences than other people. Just as part of it, you are from a ghetto, you commit a crime, you get a bigger prison sentence. Another aspect is that if you are if you commit a crime, or someone in your family commits a crime, your entire family can be evicted legally from their home. It's a collective punishment for one member of a family, first or second generation immigrant in a family, being evicted if they commit a crime. So this is what I mean when I say migrant politics and anti-migrant politics are one of the major vectors of emergent fascism. Because that's fucking fascist shit, right? Like that's fascist shit. We can be clear about that. That's ghettoization of a minority community with different systems of law enforcing legal discrimination on the basis of the fact that they are a migrant, a racialized person. This is Denmark, where people assume, and one of the comments of the reviewer was that we were too generalistic, and some countries had actually much better migrant politics than others. And the example they pointed to was Canada, which again I will come back to Canada in 1 second. But Denmark, as well as all the Nordic countries, often gets a reputation for being obviously more progressive than the rest of the world. It's an unearned reputation But it's also one that you can see connects, like, as neoliberalization of these countries occurs. And there has been an intense neoliberalization of these countries, generally as confirmed amongst the literature, that these places have become more neoliberalized since 2008, generally agreed upon. With that, you can see the intensification of anti-migrant politics and this kind of fascist shit, like ghettoization. It's fascist shit. America has a similar policy regarding the eviction of a family from public housing if a single family member is convicted of crime. It's fascist. That's how you create a fascist state. This is how you do it. You go down these lines. And I once again, I don't want to. This is not an argument about we will inevitably become fascist. This is an argument about tendencies in the social fabric of society, in the economic foundations, the ideological tendencies that emerge from those economic foundations, and the political tendencies enacted upon them. We don't have to do this. Politics doesn't have to go this way. It could go any other way, but politicians are doing it, and people are doing it. Yeah, even as Richard's saying, even without ghetto business, it's an incredibly unearned reputation if you know anything about the way they treated Greenland. Absolutely. Like, Nordic countries long have a reputation which far exceeds the actual reality of their political constitution, right? There's a reason why people say sometimes, why people say social democracy is the left wing of fascism. There's a reason people say that. On Canada, so one of the comments that I got was, Canada has a very Canada has a world-renowned immigration system that is supposedly like pro-migrant, and and it's an example, a counter-example against our case that there is a tendency towards anti-immigration within neoliberal states. Now, putting aside the logical question that whether or not Canada is not an example of anti-immigration attitudes, our argument would not depend on whether or not Canada is an example, because we're not saying everything has to go this way, we're saying it's a tendency. But Canada's a bad example to use for me specifically, because I know a fair amount about the Canadian context, and especially about the Canadian Living Caregiver Program, which I talked about in that last video on care work and the global care chains. But Canada's it did allow me to refine that. To be fair to the reviewer, it did allow me to refine the argument slightly, where when we talk about hard borders, we can often assume that means all migrants are treated the same. And obviously that's not the case. And within the literature in migration studies, hard borders are not really... People don't... When they say hard borders, they don't mean that it stops all immigrants. They really do mean that the hard border is a permeable membrane that is used to organise different segments of migrants in different parts of the working class. There were always rich, privileged segments of the immigrant community who were able to more easily navigate certain border regimes. So, Canada wanted to attract a lot of highly skilled labourers, wanted to attract lots of, it had massive gaps that it needed to attract. So it had a particular immigration system set up to benefit those people. At the same time, it also had some of the most horrendous care work systems, migrant care work systems in the world. The Living Caregiver Program was a program which migrants migrants largely from the Philippines were encouraged to come to Canada as a way to fill in the care gaps explicitly within Canadian law. They said, we are not going to fund universal childcare. We're going to do this. We're going to encourage migrants to come and fill in these gaps and act as household staff. As a pathway to citizenship, migrants will come and they can live with families and be care workers there. Legally, we'll say that their days are limited to 8-hour days. The problem is that they were entirely dependent on the goodwill of their host families. And the host families, when they see these low-waged, racialized women completely dependent on their goodwill, were like, hell yeah, these people, because the border is a method of organizing who's exploitable and who's not, these people are exploitable, they're less human, so we're able to treat them like slaves. And migrants and care workers in this program recorded the slave-like condition. And this isn't, unique to Canada, it happens in the UK as well. Lots of migrant women come over and report slave-like conditions. People working from 7 a.m. till 1 a.m. the next day. Then getting up and doing it all over again. And the threat of deportation, of passport confiscation is throughout the system. It's a way of... So the Canadian system is a way of organising, like all borders, a way of organising who's acceptable within the state and who's not. And an interesting addendum to this story, which we added into the paper, is that Canada's migration system was held up as the gold standard, the Rolls Royce of immigration systems, and has been held up that way by groups like the AfD in Germany, Alternative for Deutschland, who are a neo-Nazi party, essentially. They are a fascist party. And they hold Canada's system, in their anti-migrant politics, they hold up Canada's system as the ideal that they want, because they recognise that it keeps out and organises those low-wage workers in a way that they can fully exploit and dehumanise them. It reinforces white supremacy in a very specific way, in a very useful way, to the far right. Now, it's not limited to care work, agricultural work as well, for sure, absolutely. The reason that I focus on care work, and the reason that we did in the paper, is because of the SRT frame and the specific argument about gendered, the way in which gender and race are coterminous, or constructed at the same time as class. They are class relations in themselves. So we do mention agricultural labour. To some extent, there's manufacturing labour, but particularly in the global north, most of that manufacturing labour has been exported to the global south, which again is an effect of racialising the global south as less worthy than the global north. And this agricultural filtering happens in across Europe as well. Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, the UK. Huge amounts of migrant agricultural labour comes in, low wage, filtered them for exploitation. The point on, I think, something that's often missed when people talk about global divisions of labour and globalisation. Let me take a sip of this and I'll get back to it, and then we'll make one more song and end. One of the things that people miss in globalization, when they talk about how production is exported to the global south, and this is, this is something that is quite common in Marxist literature as well. When we talk about imperialism, and we talk about the way in which imperialism exports production to low-waged areas. But the reason why we are able to pay people such low wages, to super exploit them, is because the global division of labour operates amongst racism. the borders which facilitate global divisions of labour require the inscription of some people as less valuable, as less human, and as more exploitable than others. And I think that's also part of the whole construction, the globalized construction of white supremacy, essentially. I can't remember what the start of this point was. I was annoyed. I read a lot. This is what happened. C'est la vie. Let's make another tune and then we'll call it a day. are gonna call it a night there with this fucking True Blood ass goddamn blues track. Thanks for coming along to give it a watch, and yeah, I will try and do this as regularly as I can. Try and keep it up. Always enjoy it when it happens. Gives me a chance to rant about things that have annoyed me. And yeah, next video hopefully will be out next week, and yeah, give it a watch. And if you've not watched any of the recent stuff, I assume that everyone who's here is already has, but if you haven't, give it a watch and give it a share. And I'll just shove us onto the opening screen, and while I continue to fanny around with this track because I'm enjoying myself. But yeah, thanks for coming along, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.